Vesper was a boyfriend I scammed my way into getting. He was deaf. My absolute favorite thing to do when we were tearing up the sheets was to pull out his hearing aids and whisper filthy things right into his ear. That was, until I discovered he was actually the heir to the Harrington family. That's why the night we broke up, things got incredibly ugly. Vesper, his eyes red and rimmed with tears, told me to get the hell out. So I did. It wasn't until 3 years later, when news of his engagement broke, that I finally dared to sneak back into this city. Vesper looked perfectly aloof and unbothered on the surface, but the moment we were alone, he tied my wrists with his leather belt. Where do you think you're running off to this time? My fiancé. I kept my head down, pretending to adjust my camera settings. My palms were already slick with sweat. I never expected to run into Vesper this soon. Mr. Harrington, don't let Emma's age fool you. She's been sweeping up international photography awards left and right these past few years, Diane, the editor-in-chief, said, patting my shoulder with a teasing laugh. It cost me an absolute fortune to poach her all the way from the West Coast. I guarantee you won't regret agreeing to let us handle your first ever magazine cover shoot. Vesper swept a mild, entirely placid glance over me. Is that so? Then I'll be in your capable hands, Ms. Shaw. It was the most standard, businesslike pleasantry imaginable. I deliberately lowered my voice, trying to make it sound deeper and thicker, anything to not sound like the girl I used to be. It's my job, Mr. Harrington. Vesper gave a brief nod, offering not a single lingering look. I lowered my eyelids to hide the faint trembling in my gaze. He hadn't recognized me. It made sense. I had changed my last name. A surgical mask covered half my face, and going strictly by my current muted style, no one in the world would connect the woman standing here now with the bright, arrogant, and flamboyant Emma Carter of the past. Vesper was incredibly cooperative throughout the entire shoot. With just the slightest prompt from me, he instantly shifted into the perfect angles. Whispers rippled through the crew behind me. Mr. Harrington's body is absolutely unreal. I'm literally staring. Emma is definitely worth whatever Diane paid for her. Her grasp of human musculature is insane. Just looking at these angles and poses through the monitor, you can feel the explosive sexual tension radiating right through Mr. Harrington's shirt. For a second, my mind drifted. I remembered a young man with a flushed neck, completely naked. Even though I had sketched him countless times, he still got embarrassingly shy. Of course, that shyness only lasted for the first half of the session. Whenever I got to the latter half of the drawing, we somehow inexplicably ended up relocating. The bedroom, the sofa, the bathtub, pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows. It always ended with me dead tired, far more exhausted than if I had actually drawn 10 full-body portraits. I used to kick him in frustration. Vesper, it's like this every single time. I am never drawing you again. I'm going to find a new model, one with an 8-pack. Vesper would just grip my ankle, staying perfectly silent. After a long while, he would lean down and kiss the corner of my mouth. I'm sorry, Emma. I would freeze. Was he finally recognizing his mistakes and promising to turn over a new leaf? The very next second, Vesper would pull out his hearing aids. 4 boxes of condoms. All different varieties. I couldn't get out of bed for a week. Damn him and his apologies. So incredibly polite of him. But later, we still ended up breaking up. That night, things got incredibly ugly. Vesper's eyes were rimmed with a faint, angry red, his voice freezing cold. Emma, this is the last time. I am not giving you another chance. I kept my head down and gave a soft, muted, okay? Vesper's jaw flexed hard before he let out a harsh scoff. Fine. Get the hell out. Don't ever let me see you again for the rest of your life. Because if I do, I'll absolutely destroy you. During a break in the shoot, I slipped away to the equipment room to grab a portrait lens I had left behind. A shadow fell over me from behind. That familiar, woody cologne scent drifted to my nose. I turned around stiffly, forcing myself to look composed. Is there something you need, Mr. Harrington? Vesper cast his eyes downward to look at me, exactly the same way he did years ago. I held my breath, my fingernails digging hard into my palms. I couldn't lose my nerve now. Nothing. Just taking a walk around. Vesper's eyes were pitch black, and he smiled very faintly. Though I have to ask, Ms. Shaw, what exactly are you so nervous about? I covered my trembling right hand. The camera is heavy. Holding it up for too long during a shoot makes my hands shake. Is that right? I lowered my head. Mr. Harrington, if you don't need anything else, I'm going to head back to the studio to set up. Without waiting for Vesper to reply, I turned and started walking away. Ms. Shaw, Vesper called out, stopping me in my tracks. If someone who betrayed you suddenly appeared in front of you again, what would you do? Even though Vesper and I had an incredibly messy breakup, it definitely didn't count as a betrayal. Besides, knowing Vesper's personality, if he had actually recognized me, he would have immediately ripped my mask off. He could never maintain this level of icy indifference. I steadied my breathing, turned slightly, and put on a polite professional smile, keeping my tone strictly business. Mr. Harrington, while I don't know what kind of history you have with this person, I believe people should always look forward. There is no need to get permanently hung up on the minor details of the past. Minor details? You're incredibly generous, Ms. Shaw. Vesper's lips curled upwards. But what if I absolutely refuse to let it go? Mr. Harrington, that is your private business. I am merely a photographer. I'm afraid I have no way of helping you with that. Vesper stared at me, saying absolutely nothing. My forced composure felt like it was going to be shattered into pieces at any second. A long moment passed. Fair enough, Vesper said with a slight smile. Just a photographer after all. The rest of the shoot went flawlessly, wrapping up a full hour ahead of schedule. After seeing Vesper off, I started packing up my photography equipment. A coworker ran over, grabbed my arm, and started dragging me toward the exit. Emma, hurry up, something massive is happening. What is it? What happened? My voice caught in my throat. The platform outside the studio was completely blanketed in red roses, with lit candles arranged in a giant heart right in the center. How should I put this? It was incredibly tacky. I had already rejected Jason 3 times, but I never expected him to still be this persistent. And to subject me to this kind of public social execution right in front of everyone. No one knew just how completely awful my face looked under my mask at that exact moment. I was highly allergic to pollen. Thank God I was wearing a mask. I turned around to leave, but Jason blocked my path. He stood there holding a massive bouquet. Emma Shaw, I really, really like you. I swear I'll treat you so well. Please just say yes, okay? For a second, my mind went blank. Because I had said those exact same words to Vesper. My initial interest in Vesper was purely driven by physical attraction. Out of the countless people I had met in my life, Vesper was the only one perfectly tailored to my exact tastes. He was a bartender at a club, yet he constantly wore an expression that screamed for strangers to stay away. He had a hearing aid hooked behind his ear, which only amplified his icy, fragile, tragically beautiful aura. I only found out later that the bar was actually owned by the Harrington family. I was completely obsessed. I pulled out every trick in the book, relentlessly hounding him, lying, and scamming my way in. Until finally, I managed to coax him into my bed. That night, I draped myself over Vesper and whispered a stream of sweet nothings into his ear. Vesper, I really, really like you. Vesper, I promise I'm going to treat you so well. Unbelievably well. Vesper, let's be together, okay? Vesper lifted his head from the crook of my neck, his pitch-black eyes locking intensely onto mine. Do you really like me that much? I didn't have the time or the focus to decode the dark, churning emotions swimming in his eyes. Yeah, really. Vesper's voice was a rough rasp. Promise me that you'll only ever like me for the rest of your life, and we can be together. At the time, I didn't think too deeply about his use of the phrase, for the rest of your life. I tipped my head up and bit down playfully on his bottom lip. Okay. I'll only ever like you. It was only after we started dating that I realized Vesper's cold, ascetic vibe was a complete fabrication. He was greedier and more insatiable than anyone I had ever met. I loved taking out his hearing aids while we were making love, shouting recklessly and whispering incredibly filthy things against his ear. Just to watch him look increasingly tormented and restrained, despite the fact that he supposedly couldn't hear a word. I was arrogant and had a terrible temper. But Vesper was completely devoted to me. He catered to my every whim, coaxing me and letting me act out however I pleased. He made me actually believe that we really would have a lifetime together. That was, until I accidentally stumbled upon a photograph of Vesper and his father. It was a summer afternoon. Vesper's fingers were gently weaving through my hair. The warm humming sound of the hairdryer buzzed right next to my ear. I realized then that Vesper's last name was the Harrington family name. My heart plunged straight into an icebox. The sound of the crowd cheering and egging Jason on snapped me back to the present. At some point, Jason had already dropped down to one knee. Say yes. Say yes. Say yes. More and more bystanders were gathering around. The cheering was getting louder. More and more people were pulling out their phones to record the scene. I was literally going to die of second-hand embarrassment. I took a deep breath, forcing down my rising temper. Jason, Suddenly, a hand clamped brutally hard around my wrist. Long, distinct fingers gripped me so tightly it shot pain straight up my arm. I jerked my head up, and our eyes met. The narrow, inky black depths of his eyes looked like a massive, inescapable net, ready to swallow me alive. Vesper's voice was absolute ice. Emma, we're going home. What? Afraid I drugged it. The entire table was covered in food, and even the soup had chili peppers floating in it. I was the one who was obsessed with spicy food. Vesper had always preferred light, mild flavors. I froze, completely unable to read what Vesper was trying to achieve right now. And this apartment, the very same one we used to live in together, Vesper had actually bought it. I stood up. Thank you for bailing me out today, Mr. Harrington. It's getting late, so I'll be taking my leave now. Vesper lifted his eyes to look at me and let out a harsh laugh. Mr. Harrington? Emma Carter, you certainly know how to draw a line in the sand. Since you're already back, shouldn't we catch up? I lowered my gaze. There is nothing for us to catch up on. Nothing. Vesper's jaw locked tight before he mocked me. Right. Makes sense. After all, even if I died right in front of you, you wouldn't blink an eye. Vesper stared at me. His face was as cold and composed as ever, but the veins on the side of his neck were bulging against his skin. I looked back at him and said softly, Vesper, we are both adults. There is no need to cling so desperately to something that belongs in the past. The past? I'm just a piece of the past to you. Vesper cut me off, his tone turning vicious. Emma, you never fucking loved me to begin with, did you? If you didn't love me, why did you go out of your way to mess with me in the first place? Vesper grabbed my wrist, his eyes dark, cold, and bottomless. Emma, I told you. If I ever saw you again, I would absolutely destroy you. You wouldn't, Vesper, I said, lifting my eyes to meet his. I know you. You know me? What exactly do you know about me? That I'm obedient? Innocent? That I listen to you, or that I'm endlessly forgiving? Vesper scoffed harshly. I faked every single bit of that, Emma. It was all just a disguise I put on to keep you happy back then. Ruthless, completely selfish, and ruthlessly vindictive, that is who I actually am. I took a deep breath and spoke quietly. Vesper, it was my fault for showing up out of nowhere and disrupting your life. I'll go to the magazine tomorrow and hand in my resignation. I promise that from now on. Emma. Vesper's expression turned pitch black as he ground his teeth together. I really want to rip your chest open just to see if you even have a heart. The grip on my wrist slowly tightened. He closed the distance between us until his hot breath brushed against my skin. In the depths of Vesper's eyes, dark desire was violently churning. I struggled wildly. Vesper, let go of me. The tension in the room was like a bowstring pulled back to its absolute breaking point. But in the very next second, Vesper's pupils dilated sharply. He abruptly threw my arm back, a storm of conflicted emotions thrashing in his eyes. After a long moment, Vesper curled the corner of his lips into a smile, though it was hard to tell if he was mocking me or mocking himself. Fine. You're really something, Emma. Vesper stormed out, slamming the door behind him and locking me inside the apartment. It was only then that I realized I must have dropped my phone in Vesper's car. The clock struck 3 in the morning, and Vesper still hadn't returned. Inside the bedroom closet hung a long row of brand new women's lingerie, sheer, skimpy, and incredibly provocative. It wasn't my style at all. It had to belong to Vesper's fiancé. Vesper was getting engaged. The Harrington family owned countless properties across the city. Why on earth did he have to bring her to live here? A wave of sharp, bitter sourness flooded my chest. I slammed the closet doors shut and went into the bathroom to wash up. While washing my face, I finally noticed several angry red spots blooming from my neck down to my collarbones. I belatedly remembered that massive bouquet of flowers Jason had practically shoved into my chest. Damn him. Not only did he socially execute me in public, he actually gave me an allergic reaction on top of it. Suddenly, the bedroom door was shoved open from the outside. Vesper stumbled into the room, his footsteps unsteady as he walked toward me. The heavy stench of alcohol immediately flooded my nose. I scrunched up my nose. Why did you drink so much? Vesper's voice was completely hoarse. Break up with him, and I can pretend everything between the two of you never happened. I was totally baffled. What are you talking about? Vesper's eyes were rimmed with red. He let out a low, bitter laugh. What? Can't bear to let him go. I dried my hands on a towel. Vesper, you're drunk. Vesper just stared at me. The very next second, he aggressively yanked me against his chest. He tilted his head, clamped his mouth over the side of my neck, and began sucking and biting at the skin. Sharp stings of pain mixed with electrifying jolts of numbness. Vesper bit down brutally hard. Emma, if you were going to mess with me, why couldn't you just follow through all the way? Why does there have to be someone else? My brain finally caught up to the situation, and I frantically started explaining. Vesper, I haven't slept with anyone else. I shoved Vesper back, forcing some space between us. Look closely. Those aren't hickeys. It's an allergic reaction. I'm allergic to pollen. Vesper's freezing cold fingertips brushed against my neck, tracing the marks inch by inch. After a long silence, Vesper finally spoke. Then what about me? Do you want to sleep with me? I froze, my brain completely stalling out. Before I could even react, Vesper unbuckled his leather belt and tightly bound my wrists together. The world flipped upside down, and suddenly my back was pressed hard against the freezing porcelain of the bathtub. I struggled wildly, trying to push myself up. Vesper, sober up. You're about to get engaged. Vesper twisted the faucet open, and warm water began cascading over my thighs. Exactly. So do you accept my proposal? Vesper stared down at me, enunciating every single word. My fiancé. I was completely stunned. The engagement, that was fake news you leaked? If I hadn't, why would you ever come back? Vesper pulled his hearing aids out and set them casually onto the bathroom shelf. Emma, I told you. He stepped his long legs right into the bathtub, kneeling over me with a leg on either side of my waist. He leaned down slow. If I ever saw you again, I would absolutely destroy you. My brain let out a loud buzzing sound as all the blood rushed straight to my head. Knowing what Vesper was capable of, he could absolutely make good on that threat. I panicked, throwing my bound hands up to block him from getting any closer. Vesper, let's go somewhere else and just talk this out properly, okay? The second the words left my mouth, it hit me. Vesper couldn't hear me. But the very next second, Vesper clamped a single hand around my bound wrists, pinning them high above my head, and leaned in right next to my ear. As long as you can promise not to pass out halfway through, we can talk all you want. I was instantly paralyzed, completely shell-shocked as if I had just been struck by lightning. You can hear me? With a loud click, the bathroom lights went out. The pitch-black darkness, combined with the damp, suffocatingly hot steam, magnified every single one of my senses. Vesper let out a low laugh. I never once said I was deaf. Taking out the hearing aids did make things a bit muffled, but you were always the one shouting so recklessly into my ear. In the dark, his voice took on a deeply seductive, mesmerizing drawl. I loved it. Did that mean all those incredibly filthy things I used to whisper to him? Vesper had been hearing them loud and clear the entire time? My face instantly burned like it was on fire. I was cringing so hard my toes could have excavated the foundation of an entire fairy tale castle right there in the bathtub. How do I even describe this? I desperately wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. All I could do was play my absolute last card. I forcibly softened my voice, letting my eyes water as I whimpered at him as pathetically as I could. Vesper, my wrists hurt. Let me go, please? Vesper froze, the iron grip he had on my wrists subconsciously loosening just a fraction. This trick really did work every single time. I seized the opening, throwing my leg up to deliver a brutal kick straight at Vesper's chest. But Vesper intercepted my ankle mid-air, entirely unfazed, as if he had predicted it from the very start. Vesper gently scraped his fingertips against the sole of my foot. Baby, blindly kicking people is a terrible habit to have. And this time, I am not letting you run away. The world spun again as our positions instantly reversed. Water slapped wildly against my waist like a violent thunderstorm. Vesper clamped his hands down hard, pinning my hips to the porcelain. Emma. Say my name. I bit down hard on my lip and turned my head away, refusing to answer. Vesper wasn't the least bit angry. He abruptly straightened his upper body. I gasped in shock, hot tears instantly spilling from my eyes. Vesper, you absolute bastard. Vesper's body was strung tight as a wire. He pressed his lips directly against the shell of my ear and rasped, Baby, you look so beautiful. He was actually weaponizing my own dirty talk against me. It was an absolute hurricane. Vesper refused to give me a single second to catch my breath. I clawed desperately at his back. Heavy, ragged breathing filled my ears, accompanied by flash after flash of blinding white light going off in my brain. Over and over again, pushing me right to the absolute edge of death. Vesper was still talking, but I couldn't really hear him anymore. My bones turned completely to liquid, and my vision blurred until I couldn't focus on anything. All these years, and you haven't improved your stamina even a little bit, Vesper noted as he scooped me up from the bathtub, his tone thick with undeniable, smug satisfaction. Wrap your legs tight. If you drop, I'm not catching you. What? You're just planning to leave like this? Behind me, the bathroom door opened. The scent of body wash, tangled with thick humid steam, spilled out into the room. Vesper leaned casually against the doorframe. Drops of water slid from the tips of his hair down to his chest, tracing the hard lines of his waist before finally disappearing below his V-line. My face instantly burned red, and I frantically darted my eyes away. No, I'm not. I just needed to use the restroom. You need to use the restroom, so you're walking toward the living room? Vesper walked right over and swept me off the ground into his arms. I was wearing one of Vesper's oversized hoodies, which only reached barely past the top of my thighs. I felt incredibly awkward and instinctively started to struggle. Just as if he had anticipated it, Vesper clamped a hand down hard over my legs. Stop moving. Unless you want to do everything all over again. I instantly froze solid as a block of wood. Eat your breakfast. I stared blankly. He actually still had the energy to make breakfast? If you're not eating, does that mean you want me to feed you? I frantically shook my head, grabbed a sandwich, and started gnawing on it. A heavy silence settled between me and Vesper. After a long while, Vesper finally broke it. When are you free? I looked up, confused. What do you mean? Vesper methodically pulled a napkin from the dispenser and wiped his hands. To get our marriage license. Get married. You can start looking at wedding dresses now, and next week we'll. I violently choked on my sandwich. Wait, hold on a second. Marriage license? Get married. Vesper shot me a sideways glance. What? Regretting it already? I exploded. What do you mean regretting it? I never even agreed to it in the first place, how can I regret it? Vesper didn't say a word. He just pulled out his phone and pressed play. In a matter of seconds, an audio clip started playing that made my entire face burn crimson. Stop. Stop, turn it off. I lunged out of my chair, throwing myself across the table to snatch the phone out of Vesper's hand. Not only did I miss the phone, but my feet tangled together, and I nearly face-planted right into the floor. Thankfully, Vesper's reflexes were incredibly fast, and he caught me. I was so panicked I started stuttering. That doesn't count. You absolutely cannot take anything said in that kind of situation seriously. Is that so? Vesper gently rubbed his thumb across my wrist bone, lifting his eyes to look at me. But you also said you loved me. And I took that very seriously. I froze, my throat tightening. Vesper, The rest of my sentence was cut off by the sound of the front door unlocking behind us. Why the hell are there women's shoes here? Vesper, you bastard, Emma. Ethan stared hard at me. No, wait. You don't entirely look like her either. Vesper, did you get so damn lovesick you went out and found a body double? Ethan was Vesper's absolute best friend. I had met him quite a few times in the past. I gave an incredibly awkward laugh. No, I actually am Emma. I didn't expect Ethan to immediately explode the second I opened my mouth. Emma, what the hell are you doing back here? Did you come back to ruin Vesper's life all over again? Vesper's voice dropped dangerously low. Ethan. Ethan was literally jumping up and down in anger. You had your fun and then you just packed up and walked away. Vesper nearly fucking died because of you. He just finally started acting like a normal human being again, and now you. Ethan. I am changing the door code. Vesper cut him off cleanly, then turned his head to look at me. He just crashes here occasionally. He sleeps in the guest bedroom. Ethan's eyes went wide, absolute disbelief stamped on his face. Vesper, you're literally kicking me out over her? What did you expect? Did you think I was going to kick her out over you? Ethan was furiously indignant. Vesper, bros are forever. Women are just passing phases. Right. So you're just jealous that I have a passing phase, and you're trying to make sure I die alone. I nearly spit my breakfast all over the table. When did Vesper get this good at talking trash? Ethan ground his teeth together. Vesper, we are done. Friendship over. Vesper stood up, walked over, and clapped a hand heavily onto Ethan's shoulder. I knew you couldn't bear to cut off your best bro. Vesper looked at him with a completely deadpan expression. Yeah. Friendship over. See yourself out. Ethan was shoved forcefully out the front door, and Vesper flipped the deadbolt from the inside. Keep eating. Just ignore him. Ethan aggressively pounded on the door, cursing up a storm from the hallway. Finally, when his hands got tired, he stopped. Vesper, you completely deserve every single ounce of misery you get. If I ever get involved in your bullshit again, you can treat me like a dog. I sat at the table, quietly eating my porridge. I thought about the pill bottle I had accidentally knocked over earlier that morning. After hesitating for a long time, I finally asked, Vesper, you haven't been doing well these past few years, have you? Vesper froze. His fingers clamped tighter and tighter around his spoon. If I told you I wasn't doing well, would you actually care? His nails dug so viciously into his palm that they left sharp, bloody crescent marks. I had absolutely no idea how to answer that. After a long silence, Vesper spoke again. Since you wouldn't care, why bother asking at all? I ran away. I was terrified that if I spent even 2 more days with Vesper, I would completely surrender and throw caution to the wind. I accepted a photography gig deep out in a remote mountainous forest, forcing me to stay there for an entire month. It was winter, and the sun set incredibly early. It was barely past 7 o'clock, but the mountains were already swallowed by pitch-black darkness. I wasn't supposed to be scouting locations out here alone, but my assistant had been called away by a local villager to help with something and hadn't come back. I flicked on my flashlight and began carefully navigating my way down the mountain. Suddenly, the rustling sound of footsteps echoed behind me. An icy chill instantly crawled up my spine. I gripped my flashlight tighter and sped up my pace down the trail. The very next second, someone grabbed the belt of my winter coat forcefully from behind. I let out a terrified scream, whirling around. The beam of my flashlight violently illuminated the face of the man standing right in front of me. It was the male owner of the house I had been renting a room from. The man spoke with a thick, heavy rural accent. I've been stalking you for a long time. Finally found myself a perfect opening. I swung my heavy camera up and violently smashed it directly into the side of his head. The man recoiled, his face contorting in pain. He spat a wad of phlegm onto the dirt and started cursing viciously. Damn it, you've got some real fight in you. Let's see if you're still fighting this hard in a few minutes. He lunged forward, violently tackling me to the ground. His massive, greasy body pinned me down, making it impossible for me to move an inch. I regretted everything. I regretted coming up this mountain alone. I regretted not telling Vesper that I actually really liked him. You're fucking dead. Suddenly, the man was grabbed fiercely by the back of his collar and violently hurled off of me. His massive heavy body slammed brutally into a tree trunk, sending a flock of startled birds exploding into the night sky. Vesper's face appeared in front of me, entirely out of nowhere. His knuckles were already coated in blood. The man writhing on the ground began wailing continuously in agony, but Vesper acted as if he couldn't hear a single sound. Every punch landed with a sickeningly brutal thud against flesh and bone. Vesper's expression was terrifyingly dark, the veins on his neck bulging violently against his skin. He didn't look like a human being anymore. He looked like an untamed rabid beast that had just broken out of a cage. His eyes were dead, hollowed out by pure, unadulterated violence. The man lying broken on the dirt slowly stopped struggling. I finally snapped out of my shock, lunging forward to grab Vesper's arm. Vesper violently shoved me back. I didn't even have time to register the pain of hitting the ground. If he kept hitting him, he was absolutely going to kill the man. Vesper. I wrapped my arms desperately around Vesper's waist from behind. Stop hitting him, Vesper. Stop. His blood-soaked fist stopped dead in mid-air. Vesper turned his head slowly, looking at me with a dazed expression. The pure, brutal violence was still thrashing in his eyes, and his chest heaved with heavy, ragged breaths. My eyes were red with tears, and I was so terrified I instinctively scrambled backward on the dirt. It was only then that Vesper seemed to finally snap out of it. He dropped to his knees, pulling me tightly against his chest, gently patting my back over and over again. Emma, don't be afraid. I'm here. I carefully wiped away the blood over the split skin on Vesper's knuckles. Why are you here? Why am I here? Vesper ground his teeth together. Emma, I should be asking you. Why the hell did you run away again? And you came to a place like this? Do you not have a brain? Do you have any idea how dangerous it is out here? And going up a mountain by yourself? Who do you think you are, a superhero taking on 10 guys at once? Vesper was incredibly aggressive, looking as though he fully intended to scream at me until I burst into tears. I would. Vesper knitted his brows. Would what? If you weren't doing well, I would care. My heart would ache for you. Vesper visibly fought to suppress the absolute frenzy flaring up behind his eyes. He stared directly at me, his Adam's apple bobbing hard. Emma, what are you trying to say? I tipped my head up, locking eyes with him. Vesper, let's get back together. But we keep it a secret. No going public, no marriage, no introducing each other to our parents. Can we do that? No going public, no marriage, no parents? Vesper looked at me and let out a harsh scoff. What? You want me to be your dirty little secret? Your underground lover who can never see the light of day? Emma, what makes you think I would ever agree to that? I put down the bloody cotton swab and thought about it. Even I had to admit the proposal sounded completely absurd. Right. Just pretend I never said anything. Vesper instantly lost all of his composure. Emma. He looked as if he was going through an incredibly violent internal struggle. Fine. Underground it is. I agree. But you are absolutely not allowed to have anyone else. The one thing I hate more than anything in this life is cheating. I knew Vesper was choking down a massive amount of resentment. When Vesper realized I was staying completely quiet, he grew even more agitated. Emma, what exactly does your silence mean? Don't tell me you actually have someone else. I drowned out the rest of his sentence with a kiss. Vesper froze. The very next second, he jerked his head away, covered his mouth with his hand, and scrambled backward. Why did you just kiss me like that? Are you actually trying to make me the other man? You? He was incredibly loud. I reached out, clamped my hand firmly over Vesper's jaw, and kissed him again. There is no one else. I only like you. Even though the truth would inevitably be dragged out into the light sooner or later, I still selfishly wanted to gorge myself on this brief, fragile dream we were weaving together. I just wondered, when that moment finally arrived, Vesper, would you regret it? Why do they keep assigning you to shoot male models lately? Vesper stepped out of the shower, his skin still radiating damp heat, and wrapped his arms around me from behind, complaining loudly. Since we couldn't go public, Vesper had become incredibly clingy in private. My hand didn't stop moving across my drawing tablet as I edited photos. Because magazine issues with male models on the cover sell much better right now. Look at these 8-pack abs. That V-line. Once I add a little more shadow right here, he'll look completely flawless. Hey, what are you doing? Vesper slammed my laptop shut. I hate watching you stare at other men's abs. Do I not have them, or are mine somehow worse than theirs? I turned around in my chair and kissed the corner of his mouth. Looks like someone's a jealous mess. Let me kiss it better. Vesper let out a soft huff. You really think that's going to fix it? Baby, this is my job. You're just going to have to bear with it. Vesper completely ignored me. Especially that Adrian guy. Look at the way he stares directly into your camera lens every time you shoot him. It's absolutely crossing the line. He has absolutely no professional boundaries. Vesper's ranting genuinely made me laugh. That's called having great on-camera presence. Do you think everyone poses with the same incredibly severe expression you use, looking like you're about to testify under oath in a courtroom? The second the words left my mouth, I deeply regretted them. Sure enough, Vesper's face completely fell, deeply offended. So you really do think I'm worse than him, don't you? I frantically scrambled to patch things up. How could I ever think that? I absolutely love how serious and dedicated you look. Serious and dedicated is amazing. It makes you look so upright and reliable. I wrapped my arms around his neck. So please, stop being jealous, okay? Seeing that Vesper was still completely unmoved, I decided it was time to deploy my ultimate weapon. I pressed my lips right up against Vesper's ear, pitching my voice into an impossibly soft, sweet whine. Baby, you don't look pretty when you're jealous. Vesper remained completely unswayed. What was going on? Why wasn't my ultimate trick working today? Just as I was internally panicking, the very next second, Vesper grabbed both of my wrists, yanked me forcefully forward, and pinned me flat against the mattress. With a loud snap, the bedroom lights were shut off, plunging the room into total darkness. Vesper's voice floated down from directly above me, thick and heavy with raw desire. Emma, I want to see you. Vesper and I were pressed incredibly close together. The suffocating darkness magnified every single sensation, making me so nervous I genuinely didn't know what to do with myself. I instantly realized exactly what Vesper meant. But I have to work tomorrow. Before I could even finish my sentence, Vesper violently dipped his head and sank his teeth directly into the side of my neck. Riding a constant, exhausting wave of highs and lows, I didn't get a single second of sleep that night. Right at the very end, Vesper still didn't forget to grind his teeth against my ear and threaten me. Stay the hell away from Adrian from now on. One look at him and you know he's bad news. Vesper. Yeah. If you ever found out that I lied to you about something, would you ever forgive me? Would you break up with me? Vesper actually thought about it incredibly seriously before answering. As long as you didn't cheat on me, we can talk through absolutely anything. Could we really talk through absolutely anything? I never expected Vesper to pick today, of all days, to visit the magazine. He was currently the largest shareholder of our publishing company. But because the Harrington corporate empire kept him incredibly busy, he rarely ever made an appearance. The exact second Adrian handed me a cup of coffee, Vesper appeared right in the doorway of the photography studio. I was absolutely terrified to take it. Thank you, but I'm on a diet. Adrian had explicitly requested me by name for this shoot. His magazine covers always brought in incredible sales numbers, leaving me with absolutely no room to refuse. That was exactly why, when I left the apartment this morning, I lied to Vesper and told him I was shooting a female model today. Adrian waved his hand in front of my face. Emma, is everything okay? I violently snapped back to reality, tearing my eyes away from the door. Oh no, I'm fine. What did you just say? It's too loud in here, I didn't catch that. Adrian gave a charming smile. I was asking if you had a boyfriend. Ah. Yes, I do. Adrian looked completely unconvinced. But I asked around, and everyone here says they've never seen him. He doesn't work in this industry. He's incredibly shy. Emma, I'm so sorry. I brutally cut Adrian off, glancing down at my wristwatch. I need to run back to the equipment room to grab a few things. You go ahead and get ready, and we'll start shooting in 20 minutes. I practically sprinted out of the studio, heading straight for the equipment room. As I passed the corner of the fire escape, a massive hand shot out of the shadows, grabbed me, and violently dragged me inside the stairwell. Vesper wrapped his arms around me from behind, pinning me forcefully against the concrete wall. So you finally figured out how to walk out of that room? I fought to steady my breathing. Vesper, there is something I absolutely have to apologize to you for. Apologize for what? Apologize for the fact that Adrian is completely obsessed with you. I froze. I have absolutely no interest in him. Emma, you really make me feel incredibly insecure. Vesper reached up, his thumb slowly stroking the soft skin on the side of my neck, his voice dropping to a rough rasp. Let's just go public. Please? We had a deal, Vesper. Emma, what exactly are you walking on eggshells being so terrified of? Vesper, Vesper abruptly dipped his head and silenced me with a kiss. Our breathing grew completely ragged. I tried to push him away, but his body was an absolute brick wall. He wouldn't budge an inch. After what felt like an eternity, Vesper finally pulled back. I gasped for air, glaring fiercely at him. You are never allowed to ambush me and kiss me while I'm at work again. Do you understand me? Vesper just smiled, offering no answer at all. I checked the time and quickly walked off toward the equipment room, completely failing to notice the wildly provocative, challenging glare Vesper was throwing toward the fire escape door, or the shattered cup of spilled coffee bleeding across the floorboards in the corner. Mom, Vesper, and I got back together. We were out in the hospital gardens. I was slowly pushing my mother's wheelchair along the walking path. My mother's voice was incredibly weak. Did you tell him that you are my daughter? I was too scared to. My mother didn't ask another question. I just pushed her wheelchair around the garden path, over and over again. My father passed away when I was very young. My mother raised me entirely on her own. For years and years, it was just her. Until I was in college, when a strange man suddenly appeared in our house. He was incredibly handsome, radiating an unmistakable aura of power and class. I knew right away that he was someone with extreme wealth and a highly influential background. I was genuinely thrilled that my mother had finally found a safe harbor, someone to spend the rest of her life with. That was, until I met Vesper, and accidentally saw the photo of him and his father saved on his phone. I realized then that the man my mother had been calling her boyfriend already had a wife and a son. The perfect, flawless mother I worshipped had actually destroyed someone else's family. When Vesper's father was caught cheating, Vesper's mother threatened to end her own life. She ultimately shattered her legs, binding her to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. I was absolutely terrified of the pure, unfiltered disgust Vesper would look at me with if he ever found out the truth. That was why I had staged such a brutal, hasty breakup. Yet, when we crossed paths again, my greed and cowardice completely consumed me. I kept running, too terrified to rip the truth open and show him the ugly, bleeding reality. I had been using my bare hands to try and smother a raging fire. Every single day, I knowingly drowned myself in this lie, walking on incredibly thin ice. But all dreams eventually have to end. A massive stack of photographs was violently hurled directly into my face. The tabletop was slapped so hard it echoed through the room like gunshots. Claudia, Vesper's mother, had an incredibly well-maintained, elegant face. But in an instant, it twisted into something utterly demonic. Emma, if you think you're going to be with Vesper, you're going to have to step over my dead body to do it. Pure rage, violent threats, and vicious intimidation. I kept my back bent, remaining completely silent. That was, until she said, Emma, do not test me. Or I swear I will make you suffer a fate far worse than your mother's. What did you just say? She wheeled her chair violently forward, leaning right into my ear. That car crash years ago? I fully intended to completely obliterate her. Who could have known she'd actually managed to claw her way back from the brink of death? But with her organs failing and shutting down, she doesn't have much time left anyway, does she? Pure, blinding fury rushed straight to my head. I violently shoved her backward. The wheelchair tipped sideways, crashing brutally onto the floor. That was the exact moment Vesper rushed into the room. He stood completely frozen, staring at me. Absolute confusion, agonizing struggle, devastating pain, and the one thing I had feared more than anything else in the entire world, pure, unfiltered disgust. The raging fire I had been desperately trying to smother with my bare hands had finally burned straight through my palms. Vesper and I completely severed all contact. Every single day, I went to work like a mindless machine. The rest of my time was spent entirely at the hospital. The doctors told me my mother didn't have much time left. I had a completely clear audio recording of the conversation with Vesper's mother from that day. I had thought long and hard about making Claudia pay the ultimate price for what she had done. But what would that actually achieve? If both Vesper and I lost our mothers, would that magically fix everything and make everyone happy? One night, I went back to my apartment to pack some fresh clothes. The lights in the hallway were completely broken, and building management still hadn't sent anyone up to fix them. A pitch-black silhouette was curled up, entirely huddled on the floor right outside my front door. I completely ignored the figure, feeling around in the dark for my keys to unlock the door. Vesper reached out from the darkness, his fingers weakly grabbing the hem of my coat. "Emma, how did everything end up like this?" Vesper's voice was completely ruined, like a jagged rasp that hadn't been used in days. "Why did you have to be her daughter?" I slowly crouched down, reaching out to lift Vesper's face up. His face was covered in a heavy, neglected beard, his entire expression radiating absolute, hollow devastation. I gently wrapped my arms around him. His tears soaked instantly through my coat and onto my shoulder. They were incredibly hot. After an agonizingly long time, Vesper spoke. "I can't just stand by and watch my mother die. Emma, we need to break up." I gently patted his back, over and over again. "Okay, I accept. Miss Emma, I picked these wildflowers for you." Mia jogged up to me, pressing a small bundle of flowers into my hands before using her fingers to contort her face into a silly grimace. "Please stop being sad." 12-year-olds living in the major cities had already completely finished all of their foundational middle school curriculum. But Mia couldn't even read a basic sentence fluently yet. The educational resources out here were absolutely abysmal, and the schools were incredibly sparse. Because of that, most of the children out here started working the fields and helping their families the second they hit a certain age, rarely ever stepping foot inside a classroom. My mother passed away 3 months ago. I quit my job, packed up her ashes, and began wandering aimlessly across the country. It felt as if my life had instantly lost all meaning and direction. It felt exactly as if the sky had violently caved in on me. I smiled and gently tapped the tip of her nose. "Why aren't you in class right now?" Mia dramatically wrinkled her brow. "Miss Sarah is sick." I took her small hand in mine. "Come on. Let's go check on her." Sarah was running a massive fever. But the medical supplies out here were so horribly limited that all she could do was take a few generic pills, wrap herself in heavy blankets, and attempt to sweat the fever out. "Have you never thought about just leaving?" I poured a cup of hot water and handed it to her. Sarah weakly shook her head. "I could never bear to leave them behind. It's pointless. These kids are not your responsibility." Sarah had originally come out here 2 years ago strictly as a temporary volunteer teacher. But somehow, she ended up trapping herself deep inside these isolated mountains. Only by getting a proper education will they ever actually have a chance to walk out of these mountains and see what the outside world really looks like. Sarah stared blankly up at the cracked, peeling ceiling. "I think that makes it incredibly meaningful." At the time, I honestly just assumed Sarah hadn't endured enough suffering yet. Once the endless exhaustion and agony piled up day after day, year after year, it was simply human nature to eventually surrender. Human beings will always, unconditionally, put their own survival first. That was, until half a month later, when the earthquake hit. Sarah desperately threw herself back into the collapsing school to pull out a trapped student, and she never walked out. I stood there, watching all of those children sobbing hysterically, clinging to one another in the rubble. I fully threw myself into the disaster relief efforts. I worked myself into such a state of absolute crippling exhaustion that I actually began hallucinating. I thought I saw Vesper. He was just standing there quietly, keeping a very specific distance between us, neither too close nor too far. But the very next second, he was completely gone. I never left. I stepped up and took over Sarah's position. The children still affectionately called me Miss Sarah. The post-disaster reconstruction efforts went incredibly well. Some anonymous benefactor even fully funded the construction of an entirely new school. A real, actual building that could genuinely be called a school. I buried my mother's ashes right at the foot of the mountain. I knew for an absolute fact she would love it there. And then I stayed. Year after year, for a very long time. Much later down the line, someone asked me, why bother? These kids are not your responsibility. Only by getting a proper education will they ever actually have a chance to walk out of these mountains and see what the outside world really looks like, I replied, gently twirling a small wildflower between my fingers. I think that makes it incredibly meaningful. I watched these children slowly grow up right in front of my eyes. They went to class, they learned to read, they studied with absolute dedication, and they developed a genuine understanding of the world and a deep hunger for more. They finally realized that there was a massive, infinite world waiting just beyond the edges of these mountains. They wanted to step out and see it. And I desperately wanted them to step out and see it too. Miss Sarah, there's a letter for you. Over the past few years, I had started running my own social media channels. I filmed short documentaries about this place and about the children's daily lives, uploading them online for the world to see. Because of that, people frequently sent letters out here, genuinely expressing their love and concern for the kids. Where was it sent from? From the big city over there. I walked back to my room and carefully tore the envelope open. It was a single, completely blank sheet of paper. There was absolutely nothing written on it. I pulled open my desk drawer. Inside rested a thick, perfectly stacked pile of blank sheets of paper. I gently smoothed the new piece of paper out, placed it right on top of the stack, closed the drawer, and locked it tight. Both of our lives finally needed to start moving forward.